Friendo Steve here, and welcome back to the Friendoville channel for another Picard review. Once again, I'm joined by Tim. How you doing, buddy?
Good. It's Friday.
It is Friday. It's awesome. Woo! SmackDown tonight. Yay! That's all right. I get to drink while I'm talking about SmackDown, so that's all right. But we're not here to talk about wrestling. We're here to talk about Star Trek. Oh, look at you. You are drinking.
I need to start drinking now because of what happened in this episode. It's very sad.
Oh, my God. Okay. All right. We'll just launch right into it, man.
I wasn't planning on it, but I'm just... Oh, man.
Torture porn with Icheb.
Oh, it was right at the beginning, right when it kicks off. You're watching it, and it's so uncomfortable. I almost want to pour this whole thing out. I'm not, because it's like almost $5 a bottle. But it is so graphic and uncomfortable to watch starting off. That's not the Star Trek I want to see. I understand going edgy, but wow.
It was really dark. It was
like a claw machine looking for an eyeball, and then it gets pulled up, and the eyeball's attached, and then it gets lasered off, and you're like...
That was really dark. It was really messed up. So the episode kicks off. So I thought that this was the strongest episode of them all so far, largely thanks to the presence of 7 of 9.
Yeah.
I didn't... It was also the most self-contained episode, so they moved the plot along, but it was very 7-centric, and it was basically her story wrapped up in Picard's main plot.
Because we didn't see Soji in this episode, did we?
No. And that was actually, I'll be honest with you, I kind of appreciated that. The Soji stuff seems to move along pretty slowly.
Yeah, it was spinning its wheels kind of last episode, and then this one they focused. And it's nice to get one of those legacy characters come back. We see where they are, we see what they're doing, and it's great, even though it's at the expense of another side character. They make one character better by disposing of another character, and it's just...
Yeah. So the episode, so it started out 13 years ago, and poor Icheb, who seems to be a lieutenant in Starfleet, is being basically plucked apart by a surgeon in this really grimy, sort of hostile-looking med facility, if you can call it that.
I do have a question about Icheb, though, because I went back and watched Voyager about 6 months ago or so. He was not the strongest character. I didn't really like his character. Even his coming of age, even though he was a teenage Borg individual, I didn't appreciate the character as much. Now, when I see the aftermath of what happened to him, I appreciate him way more. So it makes me kind of interested to go back and watch some of it. But yeah, it's such a... I hate the fact that every character seems to have a really tragic aftermath, and that kind of bugs me a little bit. No one has a happy ending. We don't know about Riker yet, but everyone seems to have just a non-happy ending. And I'm like, well, please tell me somebody does. Oh, no, besides Quark, but we'll get into that too.
Yeah, for sure.
Anyway, each being picked apart, and it's brutal.
Yeah, I kind of feel what you're saying. I mean, this one was meant to be rough, and Icheb getting his eye plucked out, and then so I didn't really understand or notice. I'm assuming they had already plucked out some other stuff, because simply having your eye removed is not enough to kill you. So 7 gets there to rescue him, and she shoots everybody, and then she goes and she gets to Icheb, and he's had his eye removed. They were about to take out his other eye. They're looking for all his Borg parts, and you notice there's like a big chunk of something missing right here, and I'm assuming that was maybe whatever element it was necessary for him to stay alive, because 7 was like, I'm going to get you out of here. He was like, no, you can't. It's too late. And then she cries and says, I love you, or my son, or something like that. And then she shoots him point blank so that he's put out of his mercy, or he's put out of his misery. It's mercy killing.
It's so bad, because you find out later too that they didn't use anesthesia, and they're just picking them apart for the Borg parts, and they're so entrenched in them, especially at an early age, that they're even more embedded. There's more finite details to it, and so. Did you know it was Icheb at the beginning?
No. I heard her say Icheb, and I was like, whoa, wait a second. Did she just say Icheb? Because it was like the audio on Picard, depending on where you're watching it, is very off.
Watch with subtitles on. It'll make everything make more sense. Because you think you hear it one way, and it's not like the whole waiter water thing. I I misread that. Some people down in the comments, which by again we do read, they were saying waiter, not water. And
Yeah,
that's what
I
for
thought he
not
said
watching it with
waiter.
subtitles.
I thought he said waiter, and then you said water, and I was like, either Tim heard it wrong or I heard it wrong. In any event, it doesn't really matter. He tried to get that dude to get over here, and so I didn't want to sit there and just correct you.
No, you correct me. The comments always
Because I could have been wrong. I could have been wrong too. Is my point.
And Lacey will tell you.
So yeah, she mercy kills him, and it's just a big bummer. Like once she said Icheb, I like freaked out. I was like, oh no, that's so sad. And then you see like a bunch. So yeah, I mean, honestly, man, like I understand that it's like super dark, but I guess the flip to that is the stuff that we've seen in Next Generation is all portrayed in a way that we're protected. We're sheltered from the dark side of that because logically speaking, the Borg stuff is nasty business. And you'd have to think that, yeah, maybe you can make the case that they're portraying life on Earth, the Federation, as not as rosy as they had said it was back in Next Generation or in the original series. But there's a whole galaxy out there. Things are not going to be rosy everywhere. And what I think part of the point of Picard is when the harmony is disrupted, and in this case it was the Romulan supernova, and there's just a big vacuum of power, seedy elements are going to creep in. The Borg are way advanced technology, so obviously if you can get your hands on Borg technology, there's going to be a market for that. And it's just the stuff that we were kind of sheltered from watching Next Generation that is being mined for story for dramatic purposes. Did we need to see Icheb's eye come out? Maybe not. That being said, it was very effective and it really heightened the drama in a very short amount of time. And they did a great job, I thought, fleshing out Seven's character more than they ever did. Well, I'm not going to say that, but in a way that made sense and was logical.
It moved her character forward, and it completely changed it within 45 minutes.
45 minutes.
It changed her character and made her relevant and interesting again.
Yeah, totally. Back on Free Cloud now in Stardust City. We're in the present day. We're in a lounge. There's a giant reptilian man who we later find out his name is Mr. Fop or Fup. And he comes up to this really fancy looking lady, and he informs her that Bruce Maddox is there. And then she's like, "Oh, interesting. Go kill him." And then she's like, "Wait, hold on. I got a plan here." And she's obviously some sort of person in power. She has sort of like a mob boss sort of, feel to her.
She's not the Godfather. She's the Godmother, but fancier.
Yeah, she seems like a gangster type who's sort of in control of stuff. So now at that point, we see finally Bruce Maddox, played by not the original actor, Brian Brophy. This was a guy named, I forget his name, but apparently he's in a bunch of stuff these days. He's in HBO's Euphoria. But which is a bummer because Brian Brophy he's like a director of a theater in California in like LA or something like that. And like he still acts. And this was literally one episode that we had Maddox in. I don't know why they wouldn't have brought this guy back. They know that Trek people love that shit. They could have brought back the actor who played Icheb. I don't know if he's still acting, but they could have brought him back for that one scene. I don't get why they didn't.
I don't know either, because he looks like who's the guy who plays Monk in the TV show?
Tony Shalhoub.
It looks like Tony Shalhoub, but all beard and white hair. I don't know if you cut that or not. But I'm like, that could be an old Monk, but it just. Yeah, it's one of those things where it kind of takes away, but I'm still glad we just got Picard. Like, I'm not going to nitpick too much because I'm just enjoying the series as it is. But you're right. Getting back some of the original actors and actresses, maybe they had a scheduling conflict because if they can recast Batman 50 times, they can recast a side character too, though.
Yeah, that's true. That's totally true. And you're right. I'm not going to nitpick. But those little things, people like that stuff. People really mark out for that stuff. And I'm sure there was any number of reasons. This guy probably just had a much better agent than Brian Brophy's, if he even has an agent. Maybe he didn't want to do it. Maybe they felt that he isn't the type to toe the company line. I know he did some sort of like Star Trek parody play at his little theater that he runs. So maybe they thought that this guy can't really, he's not like the type to toe the company line. I don't know what it is, but it was kind of a bummer.
Cherry on top, like Data and getting Frakes and everybody back. That's the cherry on top. These would be the little sprinkles that make it come alive even more, that geekdom. But if you didn't catch it, you're like, oh, this person got recasted. It's just a tiny little footnote. It would be a better footnote if it was the same actor. Otherwise, it is a side footnote. So.
Yeah, for sure. Absolutely. And it's, Icheb was there for literally a scene where he gets tortured. And then Maddox, he was there he had a beefy role in this episode. But yeah, it'd have been cool to see him. Something tells me if he was still active in TV, they probably would have brought him back in. I mean, who knows what the guy's doing beyond, running.
Maybe he's not part of one of the guilds or something. So
that could be too. No, that could totally be. That could totally be. So anyways, so he's there and he looks completely a mess. He looks like basically homeless Maddox. And the fancy lady gives him a drink. And he's like, man, I'm on the run. My lab has been destroyed. I'm in hiding. We found out her name is Bejazel. Am I right? Am I saying that right? Bejazel.
Yeah.
Bejazel.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
Bejazel.
I was like bedazzled. No, that's not right.
Bejazel. Yeah.
Bejazel.
Yeah. Okay. Bejazel. He tells her that it was the Tal Shiar who he's on the run from, and then he collapses because she totally roofied him. There's also something about him having to repay a loan, so maybe that's why he was going back to her.
I think it was the debt that he did to start up his lab, kind of hiding from Starfleet. So
yeah, that sounds right. So he collapses. Yeah, she roofies him. We're back with Seven and Picard. They're in his hollow chateau. And he's like, this wasn't my idea. She's like, well, you're keeping it around. He was like, I don't know. So anyways, we find out that Seven has been something called a Fenris Ranger. There's a planet called Fenris, and she is a ranger on that planet. And apparently these are sort of like, people who were brought in or who came in once there was a big sort of power vacuum with the Romulan stuff. And they're just trying to keep the order. But it's sort of their own order. It's their own law and order system.
Yeah, they're old school Law and Order sheriffs, essentially.
Yeah, it's like the Texas Rangers.
Well, we also come to find out that the neutral zone is like the wild, wild west kind of. And so Federation isn't going out there, and with this power vacuum of different factions of Romulans, the further out you get away from Federation, the worse off it gets. So Free Cloud, there's all these other places that just... there is no law or what there is certain things, or they make their own law on each individual planet, which, yeah. So she's one of them. So while they're sort of chatting, Seven has a bourbon, neat. And this was kind of interesting bit. So she's telling Picard what she's up to. And then she's like, what are you up to? He's like, I'm trying to find somebody. Meanwhile, Raffi and Rios are on the bridge of the ship, and he's like, hey, Picard and the Ranger are in there. And Raffi's like filling in Rios, like, she used to be former Borg, same as Picard. He was like, oh man, I like this scene because we got some exposition, and it filled us in on what the general public kind of knows about the exploits that we've seen, because it's like, not everybody's going to be super familiar with. There's going to be some stuff that we've seen on the TV shows that exists in lore and legend to the general public. But I think that came at the expense of Rios's character, in my opinion. And I'll explain why. So Raffi is like, he's talking about, Rios starts mentioning things, and Raffi keeps on correcting him or feeling in more details. Her name is like 9 or 11. It's 7.
Yeah.
Oh, and did you know she used to be a Picard? Really? From the Delta Quadrant? Really? And I understand that there was a previous episode they said, you're kind of geeked that Picard's on your ship, aren't you? And this brought out his inner geek. Like, he was like freaking out, but I kind of degraded the character just a smidgen in my book. But it might go to show too that Raffi and Rios' relationship is more bonded, where he puts on the tough, gruff exterior, and then when he's talking to somebody he's really, really comfortable with, he gets giddy like I am all the time.
Yeah,
that's kind of what I got from it. But I didn't
No,
know
I
you
kind of
did.
like that though. I like that. I like that because it's dimension. It's complexity. You're right. He puts on a gruff exterior, but even like later on, I love the little bit later on when he tries to big dog Picard a little bit and says, "If we're going to the neutral zone, that's going to double my fee." And Picard sort of shrugs and he says, "Okay, Jefe, we'll do it." And Picard says, "Old man, indeed." And Jefe is Spanish for boss. And there's a twinkle in Rios's eye when he says, "Okay, Jefe, whatever you want." He's like almost openly geeking out, like, "Okay, Jefe, like Picard is in charge. Picard is in charge at this point."
You got me on board a little bit, but it almost seemed like I said, we were gruff exterior, and we see him throwing away the holograms, the EMHs and stuff, and then he goes to this, and he's kind of giddy, and then he goes back. It's such a fluctuation, and that's the one thing I kind of didn't like. But other than that, it was really interesting how we were learning through him.
I think here's the thing: Rios is a messed up dude, and Raffi is a messed up dude too. And I think when you get them together on the same page, they understand that they can sort of relate to each other a little bit. And that's why I think he's more vulnerable in front of Raffi than he is, like, for example, in front of the Doctor or in front of anybody else. So I was into that. I thought it was cool. It was a bit heavy on the exposition. But again, I thought it was a good sort of glimpse into how others would perceive the stuff that we've already seen.
Yeah.
But in any event, according to Rios anyway, Seven's reputation as a Ranger precedes herself. She is like notorious. She is, known to be, really good at her job, basically.
She's that Ranger.
Yeah. So Seven agrees to hitch a ride with Picard and help him out. They get to Free Cloud orbit, and all these entertainment holograms start popping up. There's like a mechanic one for the captain for Rios. There's, I don't know, a little dancer girl for Picard, and he's like, "No, go away." But he's pretty amused. Raffi gets, unfortunately, a drug one. So she's like, "Go away."
Which we find out, she's recovering.
Yeah.
In this episode.
And then there's like a weird boxing robot. Looks like Cletus from the Fox Sports thing trying to box Girardi, and she's freaking out. Yeah. And she shares a little moment with Rios, which is kind of cute. And then poor Elnor gets nothing. Elnor is really coming alive in this episode. I really liked him. He just wants to fit in and be part of it.
He is so oblivious, and I like that character part. Being the angsty, moody teenager, I don't like. Him being the oblivious, what are we doing? He's so pretty, but dumb.
And but he's like, he wants to be a part of it, and he's been secluded his entire life on that shithole planet. I really liked his bits in here. This was good because he's like, "I don't get one," and then we get more from him a little bit later. So Raffi ends up finding Maddox on a message board for interfacers. Now, interfacers are basically black market intermediaries who will move between interested parties for various things. So in this case, what do we say her name was? Bjayzl?
Yeah.
Okay. Bjayzl is trying to sell Maddox to the Tal Shiar because she knows that they are looking for him because he told her that. And then Seven, when she hears...
This is the dark web's Craigslist.
That's what it is. No, it's totally Craig. It's not even... It's like, this is Craigslist for space. So Seven's ears perk up when she hears that name, and then she basically offers herself up as bait for...
Use me as bait, because we know how valuable Borgs are to these black market people.
Exactly. So she's like, "We'll get Maddox, I'll offer it myself." Of course, she has her own, ulterior motive here. We do a little bit of back and forth. Picard is big, like, these scripts are really big on sort of utilizing flashbacks, which is kind of interesting.
Do you... Okay, so you were a film guy.
Mm-hmm.
Have you heard the expression that somebody really famous thought that flashbacks were a lazy form of writing? I don't remember.
They can be. I think they can be. However, I think when you have a lot of moving pieces, like a heist, if you look at like the ultimate flashback film, it's Reservoir Dogs, which is essentially a movie about a bank heist, and you never see the bank heist. You just experience flashbacks. And so I think that in this case, when we're looking at a heist, you see how the characters have like sort of pre-dug themselves out of these holes that they're going to get into. And I thought that worked a bit better, perhaps, than a linear way of telling it. I don't think it always works. I don't think it worked when they were doing that investigation in the apartment.
Yeah, I was going to say, we've seen this twice before now, and I hope they don't do it every other episode because it didn't work the first time. This time it did work better because it had that heist scenario. I hope this isn't a well that they dip back to, though.
Yeah, I know. They do seem to use it quite a bit, and I definitely agree with that. But the first thing we see is Rios beaming down to Free Cloud, and there's a big old sign for Quark's bar, for Quark's Dabo Palace or whatever it is.
2 references in this episode.
And there's also he gets that, and then a little bit later on, and then next to the sign for Quark's, we see Mott's Hair Palace or whatever it is, and of course Mr. Mott was on the Enterprise. Is that a bit coincidental? I mean, is that too much of fan service right there? I like that.
A little bit too much fan service. Okay, so at the end of DS9, who's the Nagus? No, what's his face is the Nagus? His brother.
It's not Nog, right? Is it?
Yeah, I think Nog is the Nagus at the end of.
Was it Nog or was it his mom?
Well, we can remember his father-in-law. His father-in-law was the Nagus, right? Mm-hmm. And then I think he retired and gave it to Nog. And if Nog is the Nagus, you would think the Grand Chancellor of Commerce would probably be Quark, because Quark, I think, has overall good intentions, but he's all about that Latinum, man. Yeah. So seeing his name plastered everywhere, if Nog was the Nagus, that kind of makes sense. He would. Yeah, no, it totally does.
You're absolutely right.
Which is great. And there's a couple other references to a couple other races, and this definitely, when you fly in...
No, not Nog. Nog was it was Rom, not Nog. Nog was the nephew.
Sorry.
My bad, yeah.
Yeah, nephew. So when you fly in, it has this Vegas vibe. You know, you have these holograms. They're not even like full-fledged neon signs, even though they are. They're all hologram signs. And this is supposed to be Space Vegas. There's a lot of stuff going on with the advertisements. We've seen advertisements before. Quark had one on DS9 that kept on popping up on people's screens.
That was one of my favorite gags.
It's so funny. And then there was another time they go to the planet that's trying to advertise the defense system. So we've seen this advertising type thing before, and it's nice to see that they've expanded beyond using holograms and stuff like that. And it totally has that vibe of this is Space Vegas. Mm-hmm. Like, except maybe a little more extreme, but yeah, anything pretty much is legal as long as you're not going around blasting people, because the planet has its own security system and stuff like that. But it is a bustling... It's actually one of the more interesting market-type place planets that we've seen almost ever in Star Trek. There's a lot going on. Even though they do use the same sets over and over and over again, it did feel somewhat larger than life.
Yeah, it did. No, I thought they did a really good job. I mean, you can sort of start to see the limits of their budget, but it was really well done. Have you ever watched Altered Carbon on Netflix?
No.
It's not the best show in the world, but the production value in terms of world building the future is man, their budget is massive.
Netflix always does great things, whether it's Stranger Things, even though it's really dark and gritty and sometimes a little too dark, but they have a big cast. Yeah, Netflix throws money at stuff, and then usually it's utilized pretty well too. But yeah, Netflix... Yeah, their shows are pretty top notch for production.
Altered Carbon is funny because the dialogue is like really cheesy sometimes. Like, it's not super cheesy; it's just a bit on the dramatic side.
Season 2 got announced.
Yeah, I know they got Anthony Mackie in it because you have the same character going through different bodies. It's really cool. It's like I've kept up with it mainly for the production value. What's that?
No, he's quantum leaping.
Yeah, well, it's actually sort of like a fairly, you could see how they approach the future. It's not out of the realm of possibility because basically consciousness is like transferable, and like human bodies are called sleeves. So it's interesting stuff, and they deal with like some people are like, you know, like their religious beliefs will preclude them from like, you know, getting different sleeves, and they're like, death isn't really death anymore. It's a trip. You should check it out. It's pretty good. Anyways,
also book series.
What's that?
Or book or comic book series?
No, it's a TV show.
No. There's an origin to it.
Oh, Altered Carbon. I think it was a book. Okay. I think it was a book.
I know more about the behind the scenes stuff than the actual series itself. But.
Oh, okay. All right. Yeah, you should check it out. It's good. So let's see here. So Rios and Picard, sort of in this flashback / non-flashback sequence, they all get dolled up like they're legitimate facers, which are interfacers, like I said before, these sort of mediaries. And Picard especially, again, it's sort of a little bit of evidence that Picard, we've seen flashes of this because he's a Shakespeare fan. He was never opposed to being, like we saw in the Mark Twain episode, how when push came to shove, he had to show off a little theatrical side. We've seen that before. And Picard now is a bit more apt, because he's an old man. He's a bit more apt to let the younger people be more action oriented, and he's along for the ride. So, I mean, he's making the decisions, but if it's necessary to be a bit on the cheesy side, he'll partake and he'll have a little bit of fun doing it. And it's obvious that he's having a lot of fun with this because he's got this very, very flamboyant French accent that he puts on and an eye patch.
Do I look like a bad guy to you?
Yeah. Am I sinister enough?
Yeah.
It's really good stuff. So Rios goes down there. He finds Mr. Fupp, the big lizard man. And he tells Fupp, hey, we really want Maddox. And Fupp is like, why would you work with the Tal Shiar? And Rios is like, he's like, yeah, the Tal Shiar, they're terrible. They're awful people. But I'm not actually working on their behalf. Yeah. I've got a different really party that's interested. This guy. Yeah. And so immediately the guy pulls out the cheesiest looking ray gun I've ever seen in my life. I really actually like the design on this because it looks so old and toyish.
Oh. And the actual, so don't get me wrong, number one's directing's been really good, but the gun gets held up at the camera just like that. And then when you see him pointing it, he's actually like this.
Oh, I didn't notice that. That's funny.
Or not. Like, it makes it look like he's extending his arm. He's not. It's super funny though.
Yeah. So he points a gun right at his head and he's like, it's not a good idea to do that. I don't like surprises. And so he's like, who are you with? And Rios is like, I'm with a different, and he's like, hey, you might not be aware, but us lizard people, I think he's a beta something. He's
a beta blocker.
Yeah. He's like, us beta lizard people, we can smell a lie because we have like 38 different olfactory sensors in our nose or something like that.
It's like 1,000.
30,000, yeah, exactly.
It's something ridiculous, yeah.
Yeah.
And so it goes a flashback, and then it shows the doctor giving him an injection just out of nowhere, like an old school, like, bone, just, what the? And he goes, yeah, this is, so that way when you lie and you give off that scent, this will suppress all that.
Yeah, exactly. And that's Raffi saying, yeah, it's my special ingredient. I really liked Raffi in this episode, actually.
Oh, yeah, she did really good.
And so then we see that flashback, how they're prepared for this. And then we get back to the lizard man and Raffi, he knows that his, like, the drug is kicking in. And he's like showing him the schematic of 7 of 9 and her Borg parts.
Did you think it was weird that he's sitting there and he's pointing at him, and then you see this, it goes back and it pans him getting the shot and it goes back. He has this whole it's almost like a high look to it. It's a little bizarre.
I think that's what I gathered too, is that it was making him a little bit loopy. And so he's showing him the Borg schematic, and he's like, and the lizard guy's really into it. He's like, man, this actually could work. We might actually be into this. So Picard. Okay, so yeah, we get another flashback, and we find out that it's up to the Dr. Girardi to beam everybody out because she's going to be the only one there. And then Elnor all of a sudden pipes up, and he's like, "It's like everybody's lying around here. You're all pretending to be something you're not." And he's like, "Except me, I don't get to pretend." And then they doll him up. And he's like so excited about it.
And it's so funny too, because Rios is like, has this weird old school, like tan pimp hat. And then Seven's like, put a feather in it. They're all dressed up and flamboyant, and Picard with an eye patch. And it's fun because it does remind me of those holodecks where you would see, I guess it was Q that turned him into Robin Hood. But you see them dressed up going to the holodeck, and it makes sense that they would have these flamboyant, extreme kind of outfits. And it's cool to see that kind of flashback, except they're not in a holodeck. They're in a real-life situation, and there's practicality to it. You got to have that, off adventure where you dress up a little bit in Star Trek. I mean, it's going to happen. At least
it's great. They did that with the holodeck with, like, the film noir stuff.
He played Dix.
The Dixon Hill or something like that.
Yeah, Dixon Hill, that's it.
Yeah. So they reveal 7. They sort of put some like fake handcuffs on her, some easily escapable handcuffs on Seven. Put like
There's a button on the handle. She's like,
yeah, exactly. There's like a button there. It's like just click that and you're good. They reveal Seven to Fup. Picard is totally overselling it with his accent, which is really hilarious.
Oh, it's awesome.
He gives Rios his payment. Rios goes to the bar when the deal is done, when this fake deal is done, all in front of the lizard guy. And the Picard's like, I need to see my bounty before I let this deal go through. I need to see Maddox alive. So then we get another flashback. This is the only one. This is the only flashback I felt was like sort of out of place, but whatever. It is what it is. Picard and Raffi part ways, and they have a little moment. And she says, "I hope you get what you're looking for," and he says, "I hope you do too." And it's a nice little moment between them.
It was nice, but it was out of context with back and forth of setting up the trade and everything else like that. But they had to do it because sequentially it was them at the bar in between them building up to beaming down, and then that moment probably came last of her beaming down and then everybody else beamed down. So it probably just the timeline wise happened to work out that way, because if she would have beamed down first, it wouldn't have made sense for her to be there in the flashbacks. So
totally.
It was just a weird pacing thing, not a huge deal, but it was a sweet moment because you kind of like, she's like, well, JL, you didn't make up for what happened in the past, but I have more respect for you, sort of a vibe.
Yeah.
And then she ventures off to free Cloud for what she's there for.
Yeah, so that's what we get next, and it's pretty hard to watch, or it's pretty heart-wrenching. So Raffi goes to this hospital on Free Cloud, where her shitty kid Gabriel is.
Come on.
A little shithole. It's his mom. She's like coming clean.
From someone that has a mother that had tons of issues, kind of with the boy on this. If there's somebody that I'm not afraid. My past is very, very open. Both my biological parents are pieces of work. They're both gone, unfortunately. But so no one's gonna come after me for no one's gonna sue me. But you know what? Coming after somebody that if you've given them enough time and time again, and especially over the years, it sounds like that they were neglected. I see that you're just like, I'm done. You know, as much as I may. He didn't say I still love you. I would have said that way, but there does come a breaking point. It looks like, you know, this young man who's now has a family, he's reached his breaking point. He's like, I don't need this in my life right now.
I get the
especially
feeling,
with a kid on the way.
I get the feeling that, and that's a good point, Tim. I get the feeling that the actress who plays Raffi might have been hired with this scene as an audition. I just get that feeling. Because she was basically coming clean to him saying, hey, because he's like, hey, what did you do? Did you put a tracker on me or did you hunt me down? And she sort of makes a little joke about that. She's like, I know a lot of people, so there was a little bit of hunting you down there. But she basically says, hey, listen, I'm clean now. I want to be part of your life. And he's like, no, it's too late for that. Like, do you know how hard it was when you were just talking about the synth invasion being a big conspiracy? He's basically accusing her of being like an Alex Jones type. And
getting high the whole time.
Yeah, like, and high, exactly.
And high.
And she erupts. She comes and she's like, no, it was totally a conspiracy. There's conspiracies everywhere. There was a lot more where it came from. As opposed to just maybe take the L on this one. There's still a way you might be able to get through to him, but you got to give that up. You got to give that up.
And especially, like I said, somebody that has that dual side of, you know, she's a conspiracy theorist and she's getting whacked out. I mean, that's some pretty heavy stuff. I mean, like I said, I can empathize with the kid, but there's both sides to the situation because we're supposed to be on Raffi's sides because that's the narrative that we're following. And I empathize, especially if someone that has tried to get clean and then she set that all aside and she, like, when everything's set aside out of her life, what does she do? She lives in a van down by the river. No, she lives in a trailer out in the desert. I mean,
that's totally a good point. My only thing is, I honestly think that the producers, writers, director of the show, I don't necessarily think that we're pulling for Raffi to pull this out, but I think that the kid, it's like obvious that, man, this guy's getting his life in order. He doesn't need this craziness. So like, I think that we're meant to understand that this is a complex situation, and you know, she has to do probably a lot more apologizing and you know, paying her penance
because
for this.
These characters aren't perfect. Like, we're so used to seeing like Riker or Picard or Janeway at their best, and then they go down to their worst because of that one moral decision, and then they're at their best again. This is not that. Like, she was at her best, and then she was in part of... It sounds like she was in part of it. She had something to do with Starfleet intelligence. And then she kind of went too far down the rabbit hole, and then when everything kind of fell through, she fell even further down the rabbit hole, and that led to drugs and everything else. And yeah, everybody deserves a second chance. Yeah. Everybody does. But the son's just not ready for it, or it's a personal choice for him. He just wants nothing to do with it. And then they get interrupted by a Romulan female who is pregnant, which is his wife. Yeah. And he's like, this is my mother. She's like, oh, it's a pleasure to meet you. And she's like, will she be staying? And she goes, no, she won't be staying. And he just kind of writes her off.
Yeah.
So there's a point I kind of want to bring up to this. Humans and Romulans having a child together. Would that be taboo? After everything happened?
Not now. Romulan, their son went supernova, so they can't say anything.
I think on Earth it would be looked down upon. I think part of the reason why the son is out on Free Cloud, or at least that far out, is A, that's probably where they met or whatever. But B, I'm sure it would be more openly accepted on Free Cloud.
That's a good point, for sure. Yeah.
So that's why she needed to catch a ride out there. It gives a reason for why the son's out there, and he happened to fall in love with Romulan. It wouldn't be, and their child, especially being of mixed races or species, wouldn't be accepted hardly anywhere else. So.
Yeah.
I maybe read into it a little too much, but that's what I thought.
No, I think it's a good point. I think you're right. I think it's the point of Free Cloud is when Rio says, "You mind if I go get a drink?" and Picard says, "It's a free planet, isn't it?" No, I think you're right about that. It was a great. I love that stuff. That was so great. Rios was really good in this episode too. She says her goodbye to Gabe, and he's like, "Bye," and then they leave. She cries.
And we don't see her again. We actually don't see her again for the rest of the episode.
We hear her. We don't see her.
No, we don't see her again the rest of the episode.
Yeah. Bjayzl shows up at the bar. Seven is revealed to her. Bjayzl's happy to see Seven. And Picard's like, whoa, wait a second. Because Bjayzl's calling her Annika, which is her human name. And he's like, what? Something deeper is happening here. Rios is keeping an eye on the situation. And he's like, hey, Dr. Girardi, keep an eye on the transporter. And then the EMH, she's like having a panic attack up on the ship. And the EMH is there, and he shows up. He's like, hey, and this is going to come into play later. He's like, hey, what is the nature of your psychiatric emergency right now? Because you're freaking out. You're having a panic attack. And she's like, leave me alone. And she deactivates him, gets back on the line with Rios. And she's like, yeah, everything's fine. I'm going to beam them up when, they activate their thing.
She has like a Han Solo moment because she's like, I'm fine. We're good. Everything's great. I'm 10-4. Good to go. Yeah. Like when they're on the Death Star, everything's great. How are you? Like,
yeah, what's going on down there? Yeah. And we see what's going on down there. So the guards pull their guns out on the crew. That's when Rios contacts Girardi. Let's see here. Bjayzl and Seven talk about their past, and then Seven takes off her handcuffs and grabs Bjayzl by the throat. And of course, she's like, drop your weapons, and they do.
And remember, Seven has Borg speed and strength, so she is faster and stronger than the average human, which some people may not realize. Yeah, she's pretty enhanced.
Yeah, she could crush a throat if she needed to. Oh. And Picard's like, whoa, what the heck? Elnor says, hey, are we still pretending here? And which is a great setup for Picard, who looks at Seven and says, no, we've stopped that. So Seven tells Picard, he says, hey, take Maddox and go, because Seven's going to kill all these people. Picard tries to talk her out of it. She explains the backstory that it was Bjayzl who ambushed Icheb's ship and grabbed him and basically tortured him and mined him for Borg parts. Picard is like, hey, look, man, revenge, it's not, all you're doing here is trying to settle a score. This isn't saving the galaxy. And Rio steps in and he's like, hey, listen, man, I understand revenge, but it ain't going to get you anywhere. And in fact, it'll probably end up with a bounty on Picard and the kid here, and they're not going to be able to handle that out here.
Everyone else can handle it except for these two. Think about people more than yourself.
Yeah, exactly. So Rios, and that's right after Fup, the lizard guy, started to very sneakily get out a weapon of his own that's attached to his wrist. He gets shot by Rios before he can do anything.
He has this wrist cannon, and then Rios was still at the bar, like going, "Oh, I don't know what happened," and then all of a sudden you see a pew pew, and he drops, and then Rios is there standing with them, and
Rios. So Bjayzel's like, okay, take Maddox in exchange for not killing me. Seven says, okay. They end up beaming up Girardi.
So
yeah, go ahead.
There's actually something. Bjayzel and Seven, she called her by her real name, and Annika, she mentioned that she had Annika. And she mentioned, she's like, well, how'd you know about Icheb? And Seven said, I told her about Icheb.
Yeah, so it was her own fault kind of that happened.
They hinted at more of a personal relationship.
They hinted at a romantic relationship. They absolutely
romantic relationship.
Yeah.
Some people didn't catch that. Other people did. I very, very do think there was. And that's even more why she was offended and hurt if there was some sort of romantic relationship between the two of them. Even though it wasn't black and white said, with it being hinted that she was like, you betrayed me, and then you took after somebody I viewed as my son. She's like, I viewed me as one of my children. Because when they did take on those Borg children, she did try to raise them and turn them human. So in the aspect, or not human, but what do you call not human? What do you call non-Borg individuals?
Non-Borg?
Yeah. So anyway, she's like, I'm going to give you back your humanity or your normalness. And so when Icheb decided to stay, especially after Voyager, when the kids decided to go away, Icheb stayed and became a member of Starfleet. So even then, she had someone to look up to. And then Seven and Bjayzel had their thing, and then she's like, well, there's this guy in Starfleet named, Icheb that's kind of like my son. And then that happened. It was a betrayal on top of a betrayal, which makes it even more hard.
You could also extrapolate a couple things. Number one, the only romantic relationship that we know of with Seven was with Chakotay. And that might have been enough to send her the other way. Because that's a joke. That's a joke.
No, don't get me wrong. Chakotay, that's the thing. I think actually, I think Chakotay's gone, but that's just maybe. Everybody I think has died, is alive, and everybody think is alive.
Yeah, Chakotay probably got tortured too. He probably got tortured too. I think one legitimate point though is you can read it both ways. It could have been a romantic thing. The last deep relationship we saw Seven that she was in, just a relationship of any level, was how close she was with Janeway. And she might have, along the way, thought, hey, you know what? People can be trusted. Like Janeway, I trust implicitly, and she took complete care of me. And Janeway moved on and became an admiral. Maybe as Seven sort of developed a bit more, as, gaining her humanity back, because obviously that was a big theme here, she might have found somebody else who she thought would, automatically have that same level of trust that she can have in her. And this is like the ultimate betrayal.
Yeah, she's like, hey, my real name's Annika instead of Seven. Or maybe she even took on the name Annika for a while. Yeah. And then when Icheb got kidnapped or whatever, and then after everything happened, she could have turned her name back.
She might have gone back the other way.
In remembrance.
Yeah.
I doubt we'll see any finite details unless they come up with a 7 of 9 series, which could be somewhat interesting. I'd rather see Seven do the one-shots. I'd rather see Seven pop up occasionally that maybe have some interlinking in and out. Like
she was good, man. She was really good. What they really should do, man, they should take the how they're kind of approaching the Avengers now is like you sort of pair up, or you put because there's like speculation and like in Captain Marvel 2, they might toss Spider-Man in there. They might toss somebody else. I'd love to see Seven with somebody who isn't related, Seven and, I don't know, freaking Cisco, like some other pairing in their own miniseries. And dude, if they don't go back to Deep Space Nine in some way, shape, or form, I know we saw we got a hint of Quark's here, but any of those characters Quark, from Deep Space Nine.
So, okay, do you think I'm going to call my wife out on this? The Dr. Bashir? No, who's the doctor? Is that the medic?
Deep Space Nine, yeah.
Yeah, she's got the hots for him. So anything with him in it, she's all in. She's
he's good. He still acts too. He was in Game of Thrones recently. Well, not recently, like 5 years ago.
Doesn't matter. Anything with him in it, she'll watch. But I'm always been a fan of Quark. Anything that Ferengi, I never really liked at first. And then with Quark and his kind of scheming, always getting out, he always ends up at the same. He has his highs, he has his lows, but he always ends up at the same. I love Quark. So anything like that.
You could do. You can even. I mean, look. One of the most interesting things to me from Voyager. I wasn't a fan of like the first 3 seasons of Voyager, but once 7 came aboard, I really liked it. Like I didn't watch it until way after.
You and every other 17-year-old boy.
Well, yeah, right. I know exactly. But no, the writing for her, and I thought the writing for the Doctor, they really focused on maybe a bit too much during those last couple of years, and it was actually really, really good stuff.
But there was growth and development for the characters.
Yeah, I know, and it was funny because like 7, I don't know. Looking at it now, I mean, looking at it back then, it's like, okay, yeah, they obviously put her in like basically body paint for the sex appeal. I get that. But they were doing some really good writing on her character, which was, an odd dichotomy right there. But that being said, I mean, dude, the most interesting relationship, one of the most interesting relationships in all of Star Trek was between Janeway and Seven. Revisit that. Like we got Picard. We don't see him with other members of Next Generation cast necessarily. Like here and there, we're going to see him with Riker and Troy for like maybe an episode. But like, dude, I'd take a whole series like of Janeway and Seven. That'd be great.
Could you imagine Janeway versus Seven?
Sure.
Like pitting them in a chess against each other because she's playing this she calls herself a vigilante. She's playing this outrider, and then something happens where they cross paths, and let's say it has something to do with Tuvok or the Maquis or something like that, and then Janeway's like, I'm gonna have to personally get involved, and then it becomes a game of chess and cat and mouse, and then they don't see each other, but we see both sides of the board. You could easily do that. But my only concern, I don't want the market to get saturated with Trek too much because
I'm good with it.
I would like to see it you could do like a short summer series and then a long fall to spring series.
I think the idea at this point that they've said is they want there to be weekly Trek, but it would be in 10 episode bursts. So it'd be like 10 episodes of Picard, and then I'm pretty sure right after Picard's done, they're going to do 10 episodes of Discovery. They'll have like that animated thing waiting, so you get 10 episodes of that. Right. And so I think as long as the variety is there and the quality is good, I think there's going to be a market for it.
And then there's also the rumored, and I really hope they do this because I loved Captain Pike in the Discovery series. Pike was Discovery season 2. Besides the whole Red Angel thing, I kind of saw from a mile away. But there's been other things in science fiction like that. But Pike, his acting, the guy they had act, the way they portrayed his character, phenomenal. I would take a Pike series any day over Kirk.
I would take a Pike series. No, I think a lot of people agree with that sentiment. Pike and the dude they got. I thought the guy they got to play Spock, I prefer over Zachary Quinto. I thought this guy was good.
He was. He played an interesting version of Spock, but it's one of those things where it's just kind of, I hate to say Batman again, but you have different facets of the personality that each actor brings out. I would take him any day in a week by week series. But like I said, my big thing is that you have then a Pike series, and then Discovery, and then Picard, and the cartoon, and then there was rumored to be a Sector 31 series.
Oh, they're doing that. They're doing the Section 31 series, yeah.
I'm worried that we either A, won't get around to the stories we want to see, or B, or 3 things. A, we won't get around to the stories we want to see. B, there'll be too much Trek and oversaturation in the market, which we kind of get burnt out on, which we've seen that in wrestling. Or C, they'll try to make everything like this one unified and all these stories have to interweave. And there's such different timelines. I don't necessarily want to see it. The timelines are just the movies versus the TV shows. Like everything that we're seeing now is going to be in the same timeline. Yeah, well, I understand that, but I'm saying that like they talked about bringing in some things from Discovery into Picard.
Yeah.
Yes and no.
You want to be able to see Picard without having to worry about Discovery.
Yeah. I want to be able to watch each one individually. If you have a cameo or a shout out or everything else, that's fine. I don't want to have to watch everything, though, in a specific way. Like the Arrowverse, the crossovers are great, but having to watch 5 TV series in a week, come on.
Man, they're not going to put out 5 episodes of Star Trek every week. Get out of here with that.
That's what I don't.
That'd be awesome if they did. I'd quit going in Raw. I'd just do this. Anyways, let's move on. Let's see here. So then Picard and Seven beam up to the ship. She's like, yeah, the Fenris Rangers, they're on my Fenris Uber is on the way. Can I get a couple phaser rifles?
Yeah, let me borrow these 2 huge rifles. Not even regular Star Trek phasers.
I know. Can I get 2 phasers? And she has like the biggest rifles. That was rad. And he's like, yeah, okay. And this is a great little moment.
Oh, yeah.
Because she says, Picard...
This was almost the money shot of the episode.
It was. No, it totally was. She says, after you became human again, after your Borg experience... were you able to regain your humanity? And he says, yes. And she says, fully? And he says, no, but we're both trying every day, aren't we? And she says, you're damn right I am. Or she says, one damn day at a time. And man, that I could watch a Picard 7 and 9 series all day long. The conversations they would have.
Just like the Data playing cards with Picard sort of a thing. Yeah, that was...
It was pretty heavy, and like 3 lines.
Mm-hmm.
It was really good. So, obviously, she beams down the surface and just kills Bjayzl. She goes down.
She comes down, and it's blam blam to the 2 guards. Everybody else starts beaming out. You notice that? It was like boom, 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 gone. She stays. Why? We don't know.
Yeah.
But she's like, you knew I was going to come back for you. And they have this little conversation of, you're not really sorry. You did this to me, blah, 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 blah. And she's like, she's like, you're watching. I know your security guards are going to be here in 5 seconds. And she goes, Picard wants the world to be the universe to be a better place. And I want to give somebody hope. He didn't need to see this. And just
she evaporates her. Oh, man. She vaporizes her.
Disintegration. I mean, down to like, you see like flesh peel back. It's not gore, but like you see like particle effects of flesh and then particle effects of bones immediately after. And then you're just like, yeah.
Like, luckily for her, it was like, done in a second, but oh my God.
And then Seven, and then the dudes kick in the door, and Seven's like from the trailer, Seven's sitting there going boom, 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 and then kicks back to the ship. We don't see what happens to Seven after that.
I suspect. So like, I mean, here's the thing. There are seeds. This is the fun thing. So like, I don't know how long. I know that Picard. I know they want to do a season 2. I just read the other day that they want 5 seasons of Discovery. They're about to start on number 3. They set up a little seed of where they could go with Seven. And that was when Raffi was putting the handcuffs on her. She said, I really appreciate what you're doing out there. I think it's really great. And I was thinking to myself, if they do a Rangers series, you could totally tell it from the perspective of Raffi joining them after this Picard adventure is over.
Unfortunately, Patrick Stewart's either going to retire and can't do it, or he unfortunately might not make it to the end, which I'm really worried about. Like I said, I don't know if I told you this last time. I hope they pre-recorded a Q Picard meeting. Did I mention this at all?
You mentioned it. I just don't know how likely it is.
I want them to get the actor, whoever it was that played Q and Picard. I want them to have filmed this already of him saying, as soon as Patrick Stewart passes away and they can't film anymore, saying, "Hey, the rest of this can be done without you. I need you in the continuum." And then he's gone.
Come on, man.
You laugh. No, that would be the perfect send off. Q getting involved, saying, "Hey, your time is done, man. I don't want to see you end. I want to see you in the continuum with me." And have him just be absorbed into the continuum. It's a perfect send-off for Picard.
All right. Fair enough.
It's bittersweet. Anyway.
I mean, yeah, you can't... look, I do actually agree with you that there's got to be a contingency plan. Because, man...
Pre-film it, man. I'm telling you.
You would have to... Well, here's the thing. What you need to do is, like, film... And I don't know if... I don't know how many episodes they have in the can in terms of what's been filmed prior to the actual series being released. What they need to do, because that's kind of a concern. He's super old. What they need to do is just make sure that season 1 needs to have a definitive, like a definitive solid ending where we can get closure from that, and then film all of season 2 and make sure that has a definitive end before you even advertise it. Yep. Because he can't film 7 episodes and then he dies. And then, which is a horrible thought, but things happen. He's like 80 years old now, isn't he? I think he's 79.
He's getting up there. And don't get me wrong, he still can act. He can still do everything.
Oh, he's great.
If there's one of a handful of people we probably need to preserve in a Futurama style and a head in a jar, it's Patrick Stewart.
For sure, yeah. So anyways,
speaking of not saving people.
Yeah, right? So Picard is quizzing Maddox, and Maddox is basically feeding him not a lot of info, but he's confirming.
On the medical bed.
Yeah, he's on the medical bed.
All sorts of messed up, like dehydrated, and he's barely conscious and wheezing.
Yeah.
And he's trying to. Picard's like, not interrogating him, but like, hey, I need to know this information.
And of course, Maddox is very non-specific about stuff. He just says there's lie after lie after lie. The Romulans are involved. He's pretty sure the Federation is involved.
The Federation's evil.
And he's like, that's why I sent Soji to the artifact, to the Borg cube for one reason. I sent Daj to the Federation for another reason, to link all these things together. But again, he doesn't really give us any specifics. The camera keeps on cutting to Jurati, who's obviously eavesdropping. And I'm sure you knew this as well. She's totally killing Maddox. Like,
I had an inkling, so we knew. Everybody's like, oh yeah, she's a double agent. And the thing that made me question it in this episode was she was watching old home movies of making cookies, and she's like,
oh yeah, we forgot to mention that part.
Cookies. Yeah, she's going back and she's getting teary-eyed of replicator cookies, and he's like, I don't like to make replicator cookies. I want it to be imperfect, and I want it to be, but taste the way I want it to taste, because replicators don't make it taste right. And then they kiss, so there's a romantic relationship there.
Yeah.
And it kind of goes to Maddox talks about the girls, and he says that Soji and Daj are perfectly imperfect, and that's kind of leans back to the cookies. So there was a romantic relationship. She believed in him. And he even Maddox mentions saying that Girardi, he's like, who created Data?
Soong.
So he said, Soong, me, and Girardi, you were instrumental in all creating the girls. And so we were led to believe that there's more going on. So she did have kind of a bigger part in this, even though it was all like subtle, which was really, really good. But yeah, so he's sitting there interrogating her, and she's in the corner, like, eavesdropping in while she's like, what's going on?
And I'm like, the only question is, how is she going to kill him? But before we get to that, we got Picard. So Girardi's like, hey, he's got to rest. And he's like, okay. So we get Picard and Rios on the bridge, and that's when he says, hey, we got to go into Romulan space. And he's like, okay, that's going to double my fee. And Picard's like, okay. And he says, okay, F.A. And then Picard says, old man, indeed. And he's like, Rios is like, what are we going to do about our stowaway? So Picard goes by Raffi's quarters. She says, leave me alone. And he says, I'm glad you're back, sort of under his breath.
He has a smirk on his face, and he's glad. Like, I think we're led to believe that he knew what she was going there for. And he realized that he's happy in the fact that she feels comfortable enough to come back to him.
Yep. Yeah.
He's like, she's my safety. And
he's there for her.
I'm her safety. Yeah.
Yeah,
and that makes him happy.
Yeah. And then back in the sick bay, Maddox is talking to Girardi about Soji and Daj, like what you're saying, how he's like they're perfectly imperfect, and then she totally like brings up a little thing and elevates whatever she needs to elevate, and he dies a long, painful death, long enough for the EMH to show up and be like, what is the nature of your psychiatric emergency? What is the nature of this guy's emergency? What is going on here? He's going to die. You got to do this. And she's like, delete.
And then she's like, the red veins are going up. Like, what do you die of that gives you the veins going through your skin eyeballs. Like that?
I know.
I don't know. It's like saying, Venom all over again.
She's saying something like, I wish I didn't know what I know. If you knew what I know, you wouldn't know it. And all this and that. And you're dying. And oh God, it was like a horrible way to die.
It was horrible. So I will admit, I'm a strong enough man to admit, and then they roll credits right when he's dead. The flatlining, the beep, and zooming in on his face, dead is the end of the episode. So I'm man enough to say Maddox was not dead. He did die, but he was not dead. So I was wrong on that. I still think Daj is alive. Like I said, you could think I'm crazy.
What? No
I
way,
still
man.
think I'm
Daj
Raffy,
is
man. I'm totally
super dead.
I'm totally Raffy in this instance.
She
I have
is
conspiracy
so
theories.
dead.
But I have an inkling that what's her face was their mother, or gave an egg. Not Matt. Girardi, like, gave part of her to bear the children.
Oh,
because
when he references, he says you, me, and Sung. Maybe, yeah, that could be. That could be. I still think that
or she
maybe
carried him.
If
she carried him for a little bit.
If she's thinking, because I still think that Soji and Daj are part Borg. I think they needed some, because in this episode we find out that people are after those Borg parts. Those are important Borg parts. I think that there's an element of Borg in Soji and Daj.
Okay.
And it might have been produced with... So Girardi finds out these things that I helped create are part Borg. They could be the end of everything. They could be the thing that triggers the Borg to come back and clean house again. And this galaxy, this quadrant cannot take that right now. They can't deal with that.
I still think she saw some... or what if the Tal Shiar had definitive proof of Armageddon? What if they had something from the future that was, this will cause the end, and it's definitive proof for not only this other sect of the Tal Shiar to believe in, but it's enough to sway other people going, oh my goodness, we need to nip this in the bud now.
Why would she need to kill... This is the thing that bugs me, dude. This is the thing that bugs me.
Yeah.
When we
so
find
we can't
out...
create anymore.
When we find out what the big deal is, it will not have justified her killing Maddox. She could have easily said, this is what I know. We need to figure this out together. But she killed that dude.
What if Maddox is like the quote unquote... Sorry, my cat's whiskers are right here. What if Maddox is like the father of death?
Yeah, I know. Like they might show her something that suggests he's the, like, you know, he has to die or else like it's all going to go bad. I don't know, man. I get the feeling it's going to be like, wow, that's really deep. The Borg are going to come back. But why did you have to kill him? Like, couldn't he have helped you?
Yeah.
I think it's going to be something like that.
It is going to be something like that, but that's the end of...
Don't feed your cat beer.
Sniffing. Well, do you know they have cat wine that has like a little bit of catnip and they can kind of get drunk off of it?
No, man. I don't have cats. I have one dog who keeps on farting in here. Anyways. Anyways, get the shirt. Tim's got the shirt on. It's on our...
oh, yeah.
It's at our Teespring shop.
Teespring shop. And by the way, friendos, there's been so many people in the comments that have said stuff, and we read it, we listen to it, and we appreciate everything you guys do. Share it with a friend, someone who doesn't have anybody to talk Trek. It's like wrestling. It's really nerdy. It's kind of a niche thing. But if you want to pass this on to somebody else, if you want to have a conversation, our Twitter is down below our names here. Please hit us up. Don't be afraid. I've not had anybody reach out to me, but we do have our own little closed, our secret, not so secret Facebook or the Twitter group that we talk in, which is pretty interesting. But,
yeah, it really helps the show if you share us, put us on the Reddit, on whatever Trek Picard Reddit there are. I'm not going to do that because it's our show. But if you guys want to do it, you can.
All day long. The other thing too, sorry, this is Sylvia. She's very friendly and needy right now. We want to apologize. I'm going to apologize for Steve because he's the one that makes the thumbnails. You spoiled something last week for a friendo who didn't want to have spoilers, and you put 7 in the thumbnail, and he's like, you spoiled it for me. So I am sorry on our behalf.
I'm not sorry about that. She was in the trailers. She was in the trailers for the show.
Hashtag sorry, not sorry.
If there is... listen, I understand that. I totally get it. But here's the thing. The show drops on like Wednesday night. We record this. This doesn't go up until Saturday or Sunday. And on top of that,
Wayne.
if there is a shot, I'll put it this way. If somebody dies, so does somebody... Yeah, Maddox. If there is a shot of like dead Maddox... Or no, how about this? If there is the shot of Icheb's dead body, and I put in there, Icheb dies, and then an arrow towards him, that's a spoiler. Just showing a person in an episode is not
a spoiler.
A spoiler.
Yes.
It's not. She was in the trailers, man. 2 weeks from now, we're probably going to see Riker and Troy. I'm going to put Riker and fucking Troy in the thumbnail.
You're a monster.
I'm sorry.
You're a monster.
Look, this is what I tell people because we don't spoil stuff on Going in Raw anymore. This is what I tell people. If we do something that you perceive as a spoiler in the thumbnail, if we do that, I will totally understand if you unsubscribe. I will totally get it. I totally understand. But because I think there's a limit. There's like, I should be allowed to put a still from the episode as long as it doesn't spoil an actual plot point. Seven being in the show wasn't a plot point.
But it wasn't this episode, and she'll probably be her with the two guns sitting like this is going to be the...
I don't know what I'm going to do for this one. I mean, 2 7 thumbnails in a row, that might be a bit much.
Well, but they did that all the time in Voyager, so...
Yeah, well, that's like a series. Tim, I'll worry about the thumbnail. All right. Anyways, thanks, Tim.
No problem. Hey, I got to have some input if I'm here week to week.
No, that's fine. That's fine. No, it's fine. It's good. It's good you have input. But I'm overruling you on this one.
This week was not brought to you by Dragon's Milk. That's what I've been drinking this whole episode.
Well, that's nice.
Next week you gotta... Oh, wait, you're going to drink tonight, you said.
I drink on SmackDown reviews.
Okay, good to know. I'll FaceTime you probably then, too.
Okay, whatever. Anyways, bye, everybody, and bye, Tim. Thanks for hanging out.
See ya.
Goodbye.